Hello, greetings. Dr. Joseph Martin here. Capitalism and human nature. What is our future? Now, as a social scientist in the field for about 40 years now and a psychologist, I'd like to suggest that there's something we need to raise our consciousness on about capitalism and consumerism as well, which are related issues. Now, there seems to be something inherent in social hierarchies in ancient civilizations, the first one being Rome, all the way through the civilizations, and particularly the one we're in, something about social hierarchies that suggests that there's an inherent um, inequality to the way that we have a class society, or in India, a caste society. That there's always those in charge, whether elected or not, or those who bring themselves to power, whether through monarchies and through or totalitarian regimes, that there's something about human nature that is grating when it comes to the capitalist system. But I'm not just pointing out the capitalist system. Any social system is a challenge for people in its difficulties and complexities in very large-scale societies, such as the global one we have now, that really make us and force us to empower ourselves around understanding our human nature, our light side and our dark side, our shadow side, as Dr. Carl Jung would have it, and how we are going to deal with our day-to-day life and our social living together, not only in our neighborhoods and our nations, but in the world at large. So it's fair to say that, in India, where we have a caste society, the untouchables still have a lot of kind of status, if you like, in the sense that, for instance, one of the groups of untouchables are the ones and the only ones to be able to burn the funeral pyres in the different rivers, particularly the Ganges. So they have status in that they're the only ones that can do this. However, in a capitalist system where it's all a class society, we have at this time in the early 21st century a separation of those who are in power and those who have lots of money, the so-called 1% elite, who are in charge of the corporations and the banks and international trade, whether military or otherwise, goods and services, and those in the middle class are diminishing seemingly, and those in the lower classes that are having a hard time putting rent and food money on the table. So what is this all about, and what does this say about human nature? Well, let's have a look at this now. Obviously, in higher societies, there are class societies and higher social organizations and institutions, there is a division of labor, and then there become those who are the owners of labor and those who are the laborers themselves. And in this place, there's a disparity between the amount of money that the laborers can earn in contrast to those who own the labor or the businesses or the corporations. And this is one reason why I think the young millennials are working on entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses and moving out of the system. We find that worldwide in Occupy movements, but also back to the Earth movements, growing your own food, starting your own businesses, working locally and sharing services and products and skill sets, and working together more in a communal way. Now, the 20th century, the 1900s, was a very interesting experiment of humanity in the way that we dealt with our issues. The issues were these. There was a growing kind of awareness that certain nations, for instance the British Empire, although it was still in its strength, was a little bit on the wane, and the German Empire, which was in danger of being lost, the Austro-Hungarian Empire before the First World War, and then the growing American Empire. So these civilizations, through capitalistic systems, were finally engaged in a great war in 1914 to 18, the First World War, which destroyed so much of Europe and so much of the psyches and the trust that the individuals had, and of course the influenza epidemic at the end of that time. In contrast to that, what arose out of that first war was the Russian Revolution, out of which communism happened and Stalinism, and then also, of course, in Germany, a totalitarian regime through Hitler, which again destroyed Europe a second time. And there were other things that happened in the middle of the 20th century, working on the notion that on the opposite side of capitalism would be some more communalism, the way that Jesus spoke about it in all his New Testament writings, in the sense of more social um, equality and sharing and so on. And these systems that were tried politically in Russia and in Cuba and other places obviously didn't work. Russia has fallen apart because of human nature. Human nature hasn't evolved to the state yet where we're capable of understanding and activating this kind of a large-scale social um, set of principles and values and activities to share all the things that we need, such as the grain and the food and the labor and so on behalf of all. And the same is happening in China right now. We can see that although there's a tight control going on at the society itself, based on lack of integrity and all kinds of other issues we won't go into, is actually having a crisis right now within itself and within Hong Kong and Taiwan. So what we can say, if we look at this in a kind of more higher view of human nature, within the human nature of individuals and societies and cultures and religions, we can see that there are two sides to it, as there is in everything in human life. We are always two-sided, two brains and so on. On one side, there's the liberal side, which is the side of giving respect and rights and freedoms and liberties to individuals and ethnic groups and minorities, whatever they may be, women, lesbians and gays, colored people, or other religious minorities, or First Nations peoples. That kind of ethos or value system within human nature that we've worked on since ancient Greece, and the democratic principles there have shown that, in fact, there is inside our nature a human side of kindness, gentleness, respect, and sharing and equality. On the other hand, we know that there's another side, which is selfishness, greed, envy, jealousy, and all those sides of ourselves that we need to look at in order to create a future for ourselves that will move beyond the capitalistic system we have now into something much more genuine, authentic, real, and palatable and life-giving for all involved. Because the source of revolutions, and there have been so many in the last 140 years, whether we're talking about Mexico or Cuba or Russia or China or America itself, and also in Canada with the First Nations, and all of the African kingdoms, now tribes, and now nation states taken over by the colonists from Europe, we have revolution everywhere. Iraq and Syria and Jordan, Israel and the Palestinians, we have it in Ukraine, we have it in Russia, we have it everywhere. And what is this? When people find that the liberalism on one side, the good side of human nature, is taken away and replaced by a capitalist system, and remember, the capitalist system is the conservatism on the planet. So that's the people who are in charge of corporation banks, and for most cases governments and military. And these ones, they don't necessarily respect the rights and privileges of the individuals or the minority groups. No, in fact, they're only interested in staying in charge or control and dominating on behalf of the majority, all those people, and taking away rights, as we saw after 9/11 with Homeland Security, and we have that in Canada now, some of the rights and civil liberties of people being taken away because the conservatism in government is taking away on behalf of using fear and anxiety and control and domination to take away the civil liberties of all the groups, particularly the First Nations, I would suggest, and certain other ethnic minorities within Canada. This is an ongoing challenge. It's been going on for tens of thousands of years in human societies all over the planet. We still have a big crisis right now because of the overwhelming population. And whenever the economy is suffering, as it has since the Depression of 2008, worldwide global economy, again started by human greed in the stock markets and the subprime mortgages in America and around the world, and the militarization of various countries that created more war in Iraq and all over the Middle East and the Arab Spring, so to speak, we have now a really big crisis because, as Arnold Toynbee, the great historian of all civilizations, has shown, there's a bell curve to every civilization, and we've passed the peak in the 1970s of our civilization, and now we're on the downslide. And when that happens, there's an economic recession, depression, and there's a great fear and anxiety among all the people worldwide, not just in the countries you're living in. What happens is people start becoming more selfish, more greedy, more anxious, more afraid. So they want to take what is theirs and also take what isn't theirs. This is called kleptomania. Kleptomania is taking something from someone else just because you want it. But there's an even more dire circumstance called pleonexia. Pleonexia is what's happening in Russia and other countries of the world like China today, when you take what you don't need, but you take it just because you don't want others to have it. So it's happening in Ukraine, it's happening in Iraq, and it's happening in other countries of the world. So here again, we have these two sides of human nature here. Which side is going to win out? That's the most important question. Now, we know that civil liberties and freedoms and rights have never been given to people by those in power. They have to be taken, and historically they've only been taken by those people who actively take charge and stand up, stand up, to quote Bob Marley, for their rights, whether it was women over the last 250 years through Mary Wollstonecraft and the women's liberation movement, gays, lesbians, GLBTQ, and the colored people, the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, with the black people wanting to have a vote and having a democracy in South Africa. We have this struggle going on in the hearts and minds of individuals, cultures, ethnic groups, nation states, and the whole geopolitical unity of what's going on the planet today. How will this turn out? We don't know. But it's a fine line. We're on a sort of a tipping point. We're on a fine line, like a knife edge. We're walking one knife edge as a world now. We don't know what side we're going to move on. Those of you with good heart and like mind and positive peacefulness, nonviolent communication, who can really make a difference wherever community you're in, whatever situation, issue you want to stand up for and take action, it would be important for you to do so now. Take action today and every day. Be in that nonviolent communicative pattern that Tolstoy and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and so many others have engaged upon, and inspiring us still to gather together and do this for ourselves. But I will say this, it takes one person at a time in their own heart and mind to choose what you want to be, to choose sharing and selflessness to a degree with kindness and respect, and caring and sharing of skills, services, and products, and your time and your conscience and your consciousness, as opposed to those who just want to control and dominate and take over everything around them. Now, we've looked at the history of the challenges from the 20th century and what it's done for us. We can see that when someone in a conservative mode, like pre-Second World War Germany, when somebody was given the power or took the power as a totalitarian dictator like Hitler, or then Stalin just after the war in Russia, the liberalism and the conservatism, that kind of opposition that we walk that fine line all the time, it just went right out the window, and it led to these incredible regimes where hundreds of millions were imprisoned, tortured, killed, murdered, beheaded, and so on. And the same could be happening again now. This part of our hidden unconscious shadow side of human nature is what this video is about, to make it conscious, to be aware of it, to be aware of it in history, to be aware of it in our own heart, in our own culture, in our neighborhood, in our nation state, and to do something positive about it. Because we are the change we need to see in the world. We are the only ones that can make any difference. If we just sit back and do nothing, I think it's self-evident what will happen on the planet. As Viktor Frankl, the great Austrian psychiatrist, said, a Holocaust could happen all over the world, in every culture and every nation and every religion, every ethnicity, and it seems that they already are starting to happen once again, if you listen to the news. And so, in history and social science, we look at history no longer as a line that it comes from the past to the present and looks into the future. It's actually a spiral. The spiral can go up if we have a positive attitude and our values are of sharing and communalism, kindness and love, most of all, trust and integrity with each other in our business practices, in our daily world, and in the the life and society we want to build for ourselves and for 77 generations to come. The spiral can also go down if we don't take action, if we let the shadow side take us over as individuals or in our institutions and organizations and in our governments, then we can see that it's self-evident which direction history will take us and what our future could be. We shudder to think of what that could be, but we know that we're on an evolutionary path that has come so far in the last 10,000 years, from the ancient Tigris Euphrates and from Babylon, Sumeria, and all those early cultures, the Indus Valley, and then through India, through ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and now to the future. We've messed up quite a few times. We've had so many wars and catastrophes and pandemics, but I'd like to suggest that, is capitalism a viral pandemic? Is it something that's engendered materialism and consumerism and the need for more and more and more products of things we don't actually need that are non-essential? And this kind of virus, this pandemic, this consumerism, which is the basis underlying capitalism, because it's like if you can earn more, you can buy more toys, more boats, cars, cottages, products, clothes you'll never wear, houses you won't really need to be in, and all these things. It seems, and this is a shout out and a warning to the young millennials all over the world in this new generation. I know many of you are going into economics as a study in colleges and universities, and that this is a lure. It's a kind of an enticement. It's done through advertising and marketing and media by the educational systems themselves to think that you can have more. But is money going to really make us happy? I think most people would know and be wise enough, even at a young age, to know that this isn't the case. This is toxic. This is viral. This is something that could lead to a lot of unhappiness because you're searching down the wrong path, and it's not the path that'll give you hope, courage, strength, decision, and action for happiness in your life and for the things that really matter and value, such as love and relationships and perfect health. So this is just an opening and an inspiration to all of us around the world of any age or background or color or creed, and particularly the millennials. Materialism, which has become more ingrained over the last 100 years since the Second World War, is like all these products that are all on the shelves, and we buy, and become shopaholics. They're really a substitute and addiction for finding the true light inside, the true knowledge, the true empowerment, what really matters. It's not about any objects. It's about who you are, being the love you are, finding the light, empowering yourself, doing with little or less, and giving up that and sharing more with people and just enjoying your life more, not in this rat race for making money, 9 to 5, the jobs we hate, and all the things, and getting stressed out and getting anxious and getting too fast a pace and not being able to relax and slow down, take a break, reflect, look at this, take a look at this social science, this notion. What have we become? Where are we going? Where do we want to go? Where does your life want to go? What's the inner heart passion that's leading you outside and beyond materialism, consumerism, and the need to buy, have. Instead, I would say it's more about being, relaxing, enjoying life. It's so short. Anyways, make a change in the world so that 77 generations from now, people will thank all of us for making the right choices in creating world peace instead of world destruction one more time. All my love and blessings to you, Dr. Joseph Martin. Take good care, and may you be inspired by this and take action with heart and with service and with all those of like heart and minds.